Why is it that the men who give the most, the men who answer fast, smile often, and try their hardest to be liked, are the ones women forget the fastest? You pour your heart into every interaction. You think your attentiveness is proof of value, but somewhere between your instant replies and constant availability, something dangerous happens. You stop being a man she wonders about and become a man she can predict. Machiavelli warned centuries ago, once a person fully understands you, they stop fearing to lose you. And without that fear, desire quietly dies. You think obsession is born from closeness. It's not. It's born from mystery, restraint, unpredictability, the very things most men throw away the moment they feel attraction. Liam learned this the hard way. 34, sharp dresser, deep voice, good job in product design. He wasn't awkward, quite the opposite. He'd studied how to talk to women videos, learned the right question, even memorized body language tricks. The night he met Alara, he used them all. When she teased him, he laughed instantly. When she paused, he rushed to fill the gap. When she disagreed, he bent his opinion to match hers, just enough to keep things comfortable. What he didn't realize was that every time he softened his edges, he was telling her subconscious, "I've already surrendered to you." And desire cannot grow in the soil of surrender. She didn't leave the conversation because she was bored. She left because she was certain. She could see the whole story before the second chapter even began. Men think quick replies make them reliable, when in truth, they make them replaceable. They think constant agreement makes them easy to talk to, when in truth, it makes them forgettable. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Women don't remember safe, they remember tension. And tension is born in silence. The kind of silence that lets her wonder where your mind is. The kind that makes her lean forward without realizing. Most men try to win women over with more words, more proof, more performance. But performance doesn't create power, restraint does. You don't have to be cold. You have to be calm enough not to fill every empty space. To let her curiosity bloom in the absence of constant attention. Because when you stop giving yourself away too soon, you stop being just another man chasing her, and start becoming the man she can't fully read. The cruel truth is this: most men are not rejected because they lack value. They're rejected because they hand over that value before she ever had to earn it. It's subtle. It hides in the way you rush to agree with her, the way you laugh at jokes that aren't funny, the way you make yourself available before she's even asked. You think you're being kind. You think you're making her feel safe. But to her subconscious, you're making her feel something else entirely: ownership. And what the ego owns, it stops craving. Adrian found this out one rainy Thursday night. 29, good job in logistics, steady income, solid character, the kind of man women tell their friends they're looking for. For weeks he'd been seeing a woman named Mara. He was attentive, always answered her texts within minutes, never missed a chance to say, "I support you," or "whatever makes you happy." He believed kindness would win her over, but kindness without tension isn't connection, it's comfort. And comfort, given too early, feels like completion. The moment a woman feels complete control over you, her desire for you starts to evaporate. That night, he drove her home in the rain. She thanked him politely, stepped out of the car, and closed the door without a second glance. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't dramatic. It was just done. She had felt all of him, too soon, too easily, and there was nothing left to chase. Machiavelli's wisdom cuts deep here. The appearance of scarcity creates more power than the abundance of generosity. You don't have to be stingy with affection, but you must be deliberate with it, because when every sentence you speak sounds like you're asking for permission to exist in her world, you make yourself invisible. Desire thrives on what she can't fully read, on the subtle uncertainty of not knowing exactly where she stands with you. Most men smother that uncertainty before it even forms. They flood it with over-explanation, with constant reassurance, with unconditional support she hasn't earned yet. And in doing so, they hand her ego the one thing that kills attraction: predictability. Because the ego's attention doesn't stay where it feels safe. It stays where it feels stimulated. The man she desires doesn't bend his words to keep her comfortable. He doesn't race to erase her doubts. He lets them live, just enough to make her lean in. Here's the irony. The most polite, agreeable words can be the quickest way to kill desire. Not because they're wrong, but because they reveal you've already given yourself away. If you want to ignite something deeper, you must be willing to let her feel the space between you, to let her wonder, to let her miss you, before she's even sure she has you. The men who awaken desire don't try to. They don't flatter her like it's their job. They don't perform for approval. They don't wait for permission to speak their truth. And yet, they're unforgettable. Why? Because while most men scramble to be chosen, these men move like they've already chosen themselves. Not above her, not beneath her, but untouchable. They carry an invisible presence, the kind that makes the room slow down when they enter. Not because they're loud, but because they are anchored. Caleb was one of those men, 36, financial consultant, calm in the way a mountain is calm. He didn't need to fill the air with his accomplishments. He didn't need to prove he belonged. At a friend's dinner party, he met Isla, a woman who was used to men folding in seconds. She had the kind of beauty that made most men lose their balance. But Caleb didn't flinch. He asked her a question, listened, then let silence hang like a weight in the air. When she teased him, expecting a quick laugh, he simply tilted his head and said, "That's cute." Then he stopped talking. The silence didn't feel cold. It felt unpredictable. And unpredictability is the fuel of attraction. In that pause, Isla's smile tightened. Her eyes narrowed, not with annoyance, but with focus. She had met plenty of charming men before, but this was something else entirely. Caleb wasn't trying to pass her tests. He wasn't even acknowledging them. And without realizing it, she started leaning forward, chasing a reaction that wasn't coming easily. Machiavelli once wrote, "The rarest power is to remain unmoved. Because the moment a man reacts to every stimulus, he becomes readable, and what is readable is replaceable." The man who awakens desire doesn't need to overpower her. He just needs to stay rooted when the rest of the world would bend. He can hold his opinions when they clash. He can let a conversation breathe without rushing to fill it. He can give her the gift most men can't, space to wonder. That space is dangerous for her ego, because in that space she realizes something terrifying. She does not have full control over him. And what we can't control, we can't stop thinking about. He makes her feel safe, but not certain, seen, but not owned, close enough to touch, but far enough to keep her reaching. This isn't manipulation, it's mastery of presence. Because here's the truth. When a woman meets a man she can't easily define, her mind doesn't relax. It starts to obsess. Most men live by a script. They flatter too soon. They agree too quickly. They show all their cards in the first 5 minutes, thinking that transparency will make them trustworthy. But here's the harsh reality. The more predictable you are, the faster you vanish from her mind. Desire doesn't grow from what she fully understands. It grows from what she can't quite explain. And a man who breaks the pattern, without asking for attention, doesn't just intrigue her. He hijacks her thoughts. Nathan was 32, an architect with an eye for detail. The kind of man who noticed everything and announced nothing. At a friend's birthday dinner, he met Livia. She was used to being the center of attention, her charm pulling laughter from every corner of the table. Most men fed her that attention like oxygen. But Nathan, he didn't bite. When she told a joke, he smiled faintly, then glanced at his wine. When she teased him, he lifted an eyebrow and said, "Nothing." That silence unsettled her, not because it was rude, but because it broke the rhythm she was used to controlling. Later that night, she leaned closer and said, "You're hard to read." He looked at her for a long moment, then replied with 5 words. "Most people say too much." No smile, no explanation, just a calm gaze, and a pause heavy enough to make her wonder what he wasn't telling her. That laugh she gave wasn't casual. It was nervous, her ego covering the discomfort of not being in control. Machiavelli warned, "People fear losing what they do not understand more than they value what is easily given." Every detail Nathan held back made him more captivating. He wasn't cold, he was composed. He wasn't avoiding connection, he was protecting his frame. And with every unanswered question, Livia's mind became a revolving door of dangerous thoughts. Why hasn't he reacted? Why do I care? That's the paradox. The less you explain, the more space you create for curiosity. And curiosity is the oxygen of attraction. A man who can stand in that space without rushing to fill it becomes the anomaly she can't forget. Because here's the truth. She may forget the man who impressed her, but she will never forget the man who made her wonder. You think you're being caring. You think you're being supportive. You think you're being the man every woman claims she wants. But here's the unspoken truth. To her subconscious mind, constant comfort feels like ownership. And what the ego owns, it stops desiring. That's why the emotional servant never becomes the object of obsession, only the object of convenience. Lucas was 34, a UX designer in Seattle, smart, kind, reliable. When his colleague Anna went through a breakup, he stepped in as her silent guardian. He texted back within minutes, checked in before meetings, brought her coffee just because. She smiled. She opened up about everything, her job stress, her family, her fears. Lucas thought this was connection, but what he didn't see was the slow shift in her gaze, from curiosity to comfort, from excitement to ease, from possibility to predictability. One night, after hours of texting, he sent a message that was a little more direct. "I've really enjoyed talking to you lately. Just wanted to say that." She read it, didn't reply. The next morning, she was polite, but there was distance in her tone. During lunch, she laughed a little louder with someone else. And when Lucas offered to walk her to her car, she smiled and said, "Thanks, but I'm good." It wasn't rejection in the dramatic sense. It was a quiet verdict. Not because she was unkind, but because something had already ended before it began. Machiavelli would have put it this way: do not give what has not been earned. The emotional servant gives everything too soon. He offers his heart unguarded, hoping it will be returned. But here's the truth. Power isn't in what you give, it's in what you withhold. When you show your soul before she invests, you don't feel honest. You feel available. And availability, when unearned, becomes invisible. She didn't lose interest because he wasn't good enough. She lost interest because she had nothing left to discover. Because desire doesn't grow from support alone. It grows from self-possession, from the man who can listen without rushing to solve, be present without losing his frame, and care without surrendering all control. Lucas thought being there would make him irreplaceable, but it only made him predictable, and predictability is the death of attraction. So, here's the shift. Stop solving every problem. Stop answering every question. Let one moment of uncertainty breathe, because the man who can witness her emotions without losing his own center radiates quiet dominance. You think you're talking to her? You're not. You're talking to something colder, sharper, more calculating than her conscious mind, her ego. Her ego is the invisible filter between every word you speak and every reaction you get. It decides what lands and what gets dismissed. And if you don't know how to speak to it, you'll keep wondering why your best intentions fall flat. Michael was 36, a high-performing sales director. In the boardroom, he was calm, persuasive, unshaken. But with women, his control slipped, not in obvious ways, but in small, deadly ones. He smiled too quickly to soften his opinions. He repeated points to avoid misunderstanding. He over-explained his intentions so she would never doubt him. He thought he was being considerate, but to her ego, every softened edge was a quiet confession. "I need you to approve of me." One night, over dinner, he made a thoughtful point about values and relationships. She looked at him for a moment and said, "You don't have to work so hard, you know?" She wasn't talking about his words. She was talking about the energy underneath them, that subtle, unspoken request for acceptance. And here's the thing about the ego. It doesn't respect what bends too easily. It doesn't chase what it fully owns. It only fixates on what refuses to fold. Machiavelli wrote, "The appearance of control is more powerful than the reality of vulnerability." The men who speak to a woman's ego don't rush to clarify themselves. They don't explain every mood. They don't soften their presence to stay agreeable. Instead, they lead the interaction. Their pauses are intentional. Their words are measured. They let mystery bend her perception without lifting a finger. Michael eventually learned this. He stopped texting just to remind her he existed. He stopped explaining every delay. He let pauses stretch, long enough for her to start chasing clarity. And that's when everything shifted. Her responses became sharper, her questions dug deeper, not because he'd mastered some trick, but because he stopped doing what every other man does. He stopped chasing her understanding and made her start chasing his. If you want your words to live in her head long after you've gone quiet, stop trying to be understood in the moment. Let her sit in the tension. Let her ego work for your attention. Because the man who speaks to her ego isn't the loudest. He's the one she can't quite decode. This was never just about attraction. It was about power. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands so still, it makes the world adjust around it. You've seen it now. Why neediness kills desire. Why would comfort too soon makes you invisible. Why silence, when used with intent, can speak louder than any clever line. Machiavelli understood something most men still don't. You are not supposed to be the one asking to be chosen. The moment you do, you've already surrendered the frame. A man who commands presence doesn't rush. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't give away every truth before it's earned. He doesn't try harder when tension rises. He lets it rise. Because here's the shift. When you stop performing, you stop living on borrowed attention. And when you stop chasing, you start creating gravity. This isn't about being cold. It's about being rooted. It's about understanding that mystery isn't a trick. It's a byproduct of having a life so full, you don't need someone else to validate it. Think of the men you can't forget. They weren't the ones who filled the air with words. They were the ones who made silence feel electric. They weren't the ones who bent at every turn. They were the ones who stood, unmoved. You have that in you. It's not something you need to learn from scratch. It's something you need to stop covering up. Stop racing to close the gap. Stop giving before anything's been earned. Stop being so eager to show your cards that she stops caring about the game. From this day forward, you are no longer the man waiting to be picked. You are the man who chooses. Let women feel your presence before they hear your words. Let them feel your calm before they see your smile. Let them wonder. Because a man who can stand in that stillness will not only be desired, he will be remembered. So let this be the moment that you retire the role of the entertainer and step fully into the role of the presence. Comment, dominate with calm below if this is the shift you're making starting today. And remember, the world doesn't notice the man who talks the most. It remembers the man who makes it lean in to listen.